Let's start off with the landscape. What do you see? You're keeping a pulse on the business community as part of your professional work, and of course in your capacity as president of FINEX.
Yes.
What do you see happening in the economic environment today?
All right, but again, let me start off by saying it's my pleasure to be here, Klink, and I hope that we can do justice to this excellent program
Thank you.
of yours.
Thank you.
So I think now that we're around 2 months into the new administration, things have been very positive.
Okay.
So one of the things that we're keeping close track of would be the investment confidence and by the business people. So one item that we know that has been doing well for the administration is they've put in place a very competent and strong economic team. So investors and companies are very confident on the plans that they're about to make for the country and for the economy as a whole.
Right,
so yeah, starting point, since we are still trying to move out of the pandemic, healthcare. We see a lot of developments within the healthcare space. Number one, because either a combination of interest from private equity investors. Within KPMG, we've been helping a lot of private equity investors do due diligence and then properly evaluate the companies in the Philippines in the healthcare space. When I say healthcare, it's both pharma and actual hospitals. So it's a perfect marriage of the two things, things that we should have learned as a result of the pandemic. And here comes investors who are willing to put in the financial backing to these companies. But again, relating to that, one of the excellent things that happened during the last few years of the Duterte administration was that we were able to finally, list a lot of the real estate investment trusts. So we don't expect that to stop. We expect that to continue.
Okay.
So we still see a lot of investments and expansion of the investment base as a result of REITs.
So for few rare times in Philippine history, we're seeing continuation rather than abrupt policy shifts. And I guess, is that a correct interpretation of what you're saying? And you're, as you said, encouraged by that?
Yes, that's exactly correct. The thing is, we've always been known in the past as new president, new policies, right? To a certain extent, that may still exist.
Sure.
But what's important is that we are able to continue the good things that have happened from the past administration to the new administration. And as a result of these excellent leaders, proven leaders, they will be able to course correct those that they feel may not be heading towards the correct direction.
Right, and as is tradition in the Philippines, the new president typically gets a honeymoon period, the first 100 days. But there's also a principle in business that, if you are reacting to situations, you're already too late.
Correct.
And people like you, and I'm sure your clients and your colleagues in FINEX, are looking way behind. In fact, we were talking earlier today that you were so busy because KPMG was doing its planning for 2023.
That's
right?
correct.
So maybe give us a glimpse of what are the things that you are hearing from your clients, from FINEX, from KPMG. What are the things over the horizon that you are keeping an eye on?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of the investment behavior by investors, by companies, would really be driven by what's available in the rules and policies of the country. So number one, as a result of the signing into law of the Public Service Act, which allows 100% ownership over different types of companies, right? Airports, highways, tollways, railways. So we don't expect actual investments to come in 2022. Right? So all of these foreign investors will now start looking again at the country and maybe start evaluating. And then actual investments may come in within the next 12 months or 18 months. So that has been a really excellent legislation that came into pass.
Right. A lot of people are saying that, there's really very little to criticize the government on with regard to domestic policy. Of course, there's always room for improvement, but more of the concerns seem to be emanating from what they call external headwinds. You have, of course, the war in Ukraine and Russia. You have, of course, the inflation that is being created with that. You have China, of course, flexing its muscles in the South China Sea, I guess as a reaction also to recent developments in Taiwan. What are some of the concerns that you are, or maybe not a concern, what are the developments that you are looking at, watching keenly, that might affect the domestic environment?
Yeah, I think number one, we need to realize that the Philippines, we are always competing with all of these other countries.
Right.
So it's an excellent point that you mentioned, that we are always trying to keep up. So one thing that reminds me, that I'm reminded of, is that for infrastructure, for example. So during the past administration, it's good that we reached around 5% infrastructure spending relative to total GDP. Good relative to our own past.
Right.
But relative to
the rest, we're actually behind.
We're behind.
Yeah.
And given that we're coming in from a smaller base, and even the percentage is smaller. For other countries, it's closer to 9%, 8% of a bigger GDP level. So we're always worried about that, where investors may want to invest in the Philippines, but suddenly, this other ASEAN country at that, they may be more palatable or may be more attractive for them.
Sure.
So that's always in our minds, and that's why one of the things that we normally look into would be the Global Competitiveness Index by IMD.
Right.
So currently, we are at around 48th. We are the 48th most competitive economy out of 63 within that study. So that's one. So I mentioned about infrastructure. And then we really could not maybe underestimate the... So you mentioned Southwest Philippine Sea, South China Sea. But all other political issues between China, Taiwan, and the U.S., we need to remember, Manila to Davao is almost the same distance as Manila to Taiwan. So although we call them as our neighbor, they could very well be within our own, vicinity. So we are having we're closely looking into that now. So things that could potentially affect the investment climate and the economy as a whole.
Well, as I mentioned, you guys, KPMG, recently finished your planning for 2023.
Yes.
Is there anything specific that or maybe other things in greater detail that you are looking into? Say, for example, the developments in the U.S. Do you see any relief in the U.S. economy that could possibly, have a windfall effect on the Philippines? Of course, there's China also struggling with its property market. Is that a concern also, and will that have an impact on the Philippines?
From our end, although we're looking at them, we classify them as activities that are around the periphery,
right,
but not necessarily a direct effect to the Philippine economy.
Okay.
What we're looking more would be at the mega trends that we're seeing, things that we know would continue to exist within the next 2 years, 3 years.
Okay.
And it will cut across both private and public or government. One of them would be on digitalization.
Okay.
Right? So across the different programs of the government, and as well as some of the advocacies by FINEX itself, we are really seeing an increase in investments in digitalization by companies, as well as additional programs that we know would require, services from someone like a KPMG and some other professional services organizations.
Right. Some of the previous guests on this program said that, it's well and good that the Philippines is trying to improve the domestic environment, but we have to realize also that our neighbors are also very aggressive. Of course, in the past we were compared to Thailand, excuse me. But recently, Vietnam and of course Indonesia is getting some attention these days because it's going to be hosting G20 and will be chairing ASEAN. Lots of things going in Indonesia. What are the things that you are monitoring? I mean, who are our closest competitors and how can we maybe stay ahead of the game?
Well, I think one of the advantages of being within a global network such as KPMG is that we know how advanced some of the ASEAN or even Asia Pacific countries are. So countries like Singapore, and within our organization, we even count Australia, within that bigger umbrella. And these countries are relatively ahead, maybe 5 years or more, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of maturity of their business models. So by learning from those countries, we are able to then transplant advanced knowledge bases or centers of excellence, so to speak, within our own country. But having said that, I agree in terms of proven ability to take care of foreign investments and investors. Vietnam is definitely there. We're always surprised whenever we deal with our counterparts there at how wide the investors base that are interested in that country. And then Indonesia will continue to be very competitive. But again, we're seeing likewise other investment destinations. Laos. We've been receiving more interests because we do discuss at the regional basis, and there have been a lot of interested investors and companies from both Europe and the US that are looking into those countries.
But to sum it up before we go on break, so do you share the government's confidence that we will see healthy growth in 2023 and beyond?
I definitely do. So
Okay.
I share in that optimism, and it's really based on facts.
Okay.
We do have a lot of good things working for us, and it's a matter of having our government leaders and of course the business sector leaders work together to tide us through for the next years and so.